So that's the overview of the variety of rating systems. So now let's break those down a little bit. This is the new LEED 2009 reference manual for green building design and construction. Many more little paragraphs or tools to use in this reference manual than the previous version. And my personal opinion is it's way more user-friendly. If you've cracked LEED 2.2 for new construction or prior, it was cryptic, it was hard to read, you'd want to fall asleep, at least me, I guess I'm talking personally here. And the new manual is easy to read, it flows, and it has more applicable sections to it to actually help with the process and help make informed decisions throughout. And that's because of these categories. So you always start with the credit category. So if you're dealing with something that has to do with energy, first you flip to that category. Gotta go category 3. Then you find your credit or your prerequisite within that. We'll talk about what the difference between those two. After that is the credit intent. What is this credit trying to achieve? What's the intention behind it? That's fundamental towards certification and choosing which credits apply to your project. Then there's the requirements. And this is where it gets more technical. When you're actually on a project, you're looking at what percentage energy savings do I have to hit to get a certain amount of points, or water savings to get a certain amount of points, or a certain amount of occupants in a building need bike racks. It's a very stringent code, so it's an actual criteria. So when you get a certification, somebody actually met these various thresholds. That's in the requirement. That's what a LEED AP Plus would have to know. Environmental and economic issues. This is a new paragraph that's very handy in the conversation with a client or within the team. Is this worth it to us? What do we have to consider as we're going for this credit? Related credits. So here we're talking about synergies, how these interact. Some of them negatively counteract each other, like increased ventilation can require more energy consumption. So all of a sudden you have to think about, well, can we do heat recovery to reduce some of that extra energy load from more ventilation? It just triggers that thought to, maybe think about how these two things are interacting with each other. And the reference manual will highlight those. So you start in your conversation. So it's a great tool for the design process. Reference standards, very important. I mentioned Green Seal. Just being educated about when you're speccing these products, when you're actually picking them out, what references should be met. Or just what references give me more information on this topic because I need to know more about it. Implementation, how you go about it, what some typical strategies are. Exemplary performance. This is one way to get innovation design points, and we'll talk about that. Timeline and team. This is a great one. When do I start this conversation? Is this important in pre-design? Pretty much all of them are important in pre-design to a certain degree, but when do they really get implemented? When does it get into action? There's design credits, there's construction credits. It's important to know the difference between the two. Documentation. This is the big one. We'll show you a tool that EcoReal uses because the documentation is still abundant even though it's online. Calculations. Not a huge amount of complicated calculations, but there is a little bit just to make sure you're checking your percent savings, or in some cases your density, or whatever that credit's addressing. So prerequisites, a little terminology since we're throwing these terms out here. These are the mandatory things that you have to hit within each category. And now each category within the LEED rating system for building design and construction has at least one prerequisite associated to it. Water didn't used to have one. Now it does. That's that responding to the needs of the building industry and taking a look at where our resources are at. And water now, there is a mandatory 20% savings. If you're a LEED building, that building is saving 20% of its water compared to a baseline standard, which is that set by the EPA standards. So they're required, and you don't earn any points. That's just fundamental to every LEED building. Has to hit these prerequisites. When you first open up the category, it'll be the first thing you see, and then it'll get into credits. We start earning the points to build up to a certain certification. So the credits, Like I said, this is where we're building points. This is where you're looking at that LEED credit scorecard, seeing maybe low-hanging fruit, which credits, which topics apply to your type of site, your region, your construction method, what your goals are. These are things you want to assess early on in pre-design, and this will be how you achieve points, and it takes a certain amount of points to then achieve a certain certification level that we'll look at. So you don't have to earn all the credits. They don't all apply to every credit, to every project. To this day, there's not a project that's got all of them because it's impossible. So I shouldn't say it's impossible, but it hasn't been done. So it's really about choosing the appropriate credits and doing them wisely. So the credits and prerequisites in the various rating systems are now better aligned. And so if you know the Building Design and Construction Manual, you'll understand the credits and the categories within the Commercial Interiors Manual and Operations and Maintenance as well. So there's 100 total points, and we'll look at how the different certification levels are broken up into earning those various credits and point thresholds in the LEED 2009 update section we're just about to get to. So LEED Building Design and Construction, these are some example credits. So these are the first credits within each category. So we've got sample sites, abbreviation, get familiar with that, SS, credit 1, that's how it would show up in your reference manual or your scorecard. SS, credit 1, site selections, the credit title, earn 1 point. So you don't earn a lot of points. Water efficiency, the first, that's the category. WE, credit 1, water efficient landscaping. This got more heavily weighted. You can earn up to 4 points for water efficient landscaping. A lot of that just has to do with native plants, knowing what is best in your region. So once again, just being responsible, being aware of what the best choices are for your particular project. Not a one-stop shop for every project, being aware of what's best for your climate. Energy and atmosphere, much more heavily weighted in LEED 2009. And this was a criticism that they addressed, that, you know, a bike rack shouldn't earn the same amount of points as an efficient HVAC system because it doesn't have the same impact or savings environmentally or economically. So you can earn up to 19 points in just that one credit. So you're seeing the variation between points and the relationship to credits. They're not just 1 point per credit, and so on. We'll get more into the credits tomorrow. All right, so this is the key changes in LEED 2009. And you can look at your EcoReal Getting Started manual, where we point out the key highlights. So this is your quick reference sheet, because these are very important, and there's a lot of LEED APs out there that aren't aware of these changes in the new rating system. So this is really fundamental because many of these are required, and all of them offer opportunities you need to be aware of to be successful in a project. So 7 key changes in LEED 2009 that evolved from LEED 2.2 and prior versions. Alignment and predictability. We're going to talk about each one of these in depth, so I won't get carried away now. 100-point scale. I will mention that before it was 69 points, and it was just very arbitrary, and it was hard to remember where that threshold was between LEED Silver building and LEED Gold. So 100 points. They made it more logical point scale, in my opinion. Another improvement. 6 innovation design points. That's one additional to before. So more encouragement to think outside the box. Points are re-weighted, as we started to discuss. 4 added regional priority credits. This is where you start talking about LEED addressing the regional differences, another criticism they responded to. Minimum program requirements. This is fundamental to every LEED project, and this is new to LEED 2009, and a LEED AP that gets on a project that doesn't know this is going to show a weakness, because it's like a prerequisite, but it's even before that. These are fundamental things you must assess early on in a project to see if it's even something you can attain, if LEED certification is something you can do. Ongoing monitoring and reporting energy and water usage. This is huge because these LEED buildings were criticized for not performing as the energy models were designed to or were saying they were going to. And there's a lot of factors that we can learn from looking at that data. You know, how occupants affect a building, how not maintaining the systems affect it, how not checking the systems before they go in sufficiently affect it. There's a lot of things that affect this data. So they're starting to collect that. So when it evolves again in 2 years as part of the predictability, then they'll be making informed decisions of what should change in the rating system and how it should grow. So we're going to talk about each one of those. Harmonization. So the LEED 2009 Green Building Design and Construction Manual now integrates new construction, core and shell, and schools. Those 3 rating systems are all in one manual. This, to me, is a huge improvement because I several times was on a project where I didn't realize that maybe the mechanical engineer or somebody on the team didn't realize we were on a LEED core and shell project, and they were looking at a new construction manual, and they were looking at the wrong credit threshold. So they think they're doing something right, but they're meeting the wrong criteria. So now it's just right there in one manual. You see the different points that can be attained in each one of those 3 categories. And when we get into actually looking at some of those credits tomorrow, you'll see how that's broken up very clearly and all in one place, because those really relate to each other. Alignment. So this is about alignment of the credits and the prerequisites among all those rating systems. So it sounds kind of overwhelming. Oh my gosh, there's all these rating systems. There's no way I can read all these manuals. I don't know who can. It's a lot of material. So once you kind of harness what the LEED rating system is about, what these credit intents are, what those 5 categories mean, and the kind of credits that lie within those, you get the LEED rating systems in general. And they tried to align that even more closely in LEED 2009. So if you take a vertical slice through of all those rating systems stacked together, you'll see similarities through all in terms of the categories, credit titles, and their intents. Predictability. So LEED 2009 caused a little bit of a shakeup because it was such a big change. So I know some people that just want to throw in the towel, like, oh, they're just going to change it. You know, why do I want to learn something? Well, it's not about that. It's about every 2 years they're going through that process, that consensus base, where these groups of various practitioners are talking about what they're really seeing in the green building industry and what needs to be addressed, what needs to be approved. And since LEED has really become the national metric to measure high performance buildings, they need to be staying on top of that. So every 2 years, there will be an updated version, but it will look very similar to what we see today, just making sure it evolves and stay on top of those issues. 100-point scale. Like I said, the previous version was 69 points, and where you were certified, where you hit silver, was just what seemed like some random points that were chosen. Now, pretty easy to remember. LEED Silver is becoming kind of code. A lot of city codes like LA are using LEED Silver as kind of, that's your baseline. You at least need to hit equivalent to what a LEED Silver building would be achieving in terms of sustainable strategies. And so that's 50 points. So you have 100 points total. Half of that is your baseline, LEED Silver. To just get certified, it's 40 points. So definitely that's an important number. If you just are looking for LEED certification, 40 points are what you have to achieve within those credits. 50 points silver, 60 points gold, so 10-point increments, but there is a jump to platinum. Platinum is very hard to achieve at this point until we learn about integrated design more and how to all work together. This will get easier to achieve, but 80 points is the threshold for platinum certification, and that takes some good work. Doesn't make it harder. It's just that mental shift of us all working together and addressing these issues in a different way. So 100 points total. But then you have your 10 additional points on top of the 100, and this is this kind of bonus area we're going to talk about. Innovation design is the first 6 points of those 10 available, and it's done in a variety of ways. 3 of those points can be earned from just earning a higher threshold within a credit. Like let's say you got 40% water savings, and that got you 4 points. Well, if you hit 45% water savings, you get an exemplary performance point. So it's not thinking outside the box, it's just pushing the envelope a little bit further. And that lies within this innovation design credit threshold. But you can only get 3 innovation design points that way, because what changed also in LEED 2009 is they want you to think outside the box. They are pushing for that. They put another point here. So half those points at least need to come from something that's a strategy that maybe wasn't addressed in LEED 2009 rating system. It's not perfect. It's just, a framework of good ideas to work within, but thinking beyond that's very important in sustainable design. And so coming up with something that pertains to your site, your project, that you can prove has a positive environmental impact for your building and community, then you can apply for another innovation design point. Here's some examples. Building as an educational tool, this is very important for schools, especially. They're pushing this. It's important for every project to just raise awareness, but for schools, they're pushing it in the curriculum itself, so kids early on are understanding that how they engage in the built environment is essential to us as a society and how they live their lives. And the schools are doing that, are getting great success. Kids are really enjoying it. Composting programs, there's little things that are getting kickstarted, and I hope that grows. Cradle to cradle is a term we'll talk about in materials and resources. Regional variations. This is designing within the architectural vernacular. Architects have been accused of kind of being a little egotistical at times, just kind of designing whatever they want to, wherever they want to. And this rewards just at least designing appropriately, maybe construction methods that have been done for thousands of years. Maybe there's a reason. Maybe the Adobe type architecture makes a little more sense in certain parts of the world. Just when you get there, take a look what's been done, and it's a good idea to learn from it. Credit weighting. So this is where we discussed that a big criticism of LEED over the years has been that it's not really applicable to having the real environmental impacts reduced. That what does parking slots for a carpool really do opposed to energy efficiency savings or CO2 monitors or something that's a little bit more of an integrated approach. So what they did, it was a very scientific process they went through. They did collaborate. They based this judgment of the previous LEED rating system, 2.2, and said, let's take a look at these credits, and then based on the impact categories defined by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, let's assess how they're actually affecting the environment and human health. And then the category weights established by the National Institute of Standards of Technology were then actually associated how heavily they should be weighted once they saw where that importance lies, and then the USGBC interpreted those results. So you can tell they at least put some serious effort into it. So the combination provided the basis for determining the point value of each credit, and that's why we saw a big push of 19 points in just energy optimization. That's something that's new in 2009. There's another point available for exemplary performance in that, so 20 points in one credit. So do you remember how far that gets you towards certification? Halfway, right on. So one credit, you're halfway to the 40 points you need for certification. Is your fake candy. All right, so credit weighting. So the tool is Tracy. This is an important tool to know in general because it has to do with life cycle analysis as well. So what Tracy stands for is the Tools for the Reduction and Assessment of Chemical and Other Environmental Impacts. So it's looking at a full life cycle assessment of building systems, processes, pollution prevention, and all these different factors. And then the National Institute of Standards Technology is NIST. So these are the tools that helped identify these key impact categories. So there are 13 of them. Here's some examples. We have water intake, We have resource depletion, human health criteria, water intake, all very important impact categories. But they looked at the two most important ones based on this scientific process they went through. And climate change and indoor environmental quality were seen as the most pending important issues that we're seeing right now, presently. And this will get reevaluated. But that's what they're seeing right now. So then what credits will have the biggest impact on those two impact categories? So what they saw was energy efficiency credits would be very important. We saw an example of how that got reweighted, and then reduced carbon dioxide, so CO2 emissions. So credits that have to do with opportunities to reduce your CO2 emissions. And that can do with not just the building, but automobile use. How far your project is from basic amenities or from jobs. That affects the CO2 that's related to your project. So that's why sustainable sites got more heavily weighted as well. And indoor environmental quality runs throughout. You reduce CO2, ironically, you're helping indoor environmental quality as well. Got a bunch of electric cars outside, you can open up your windows better, get some fresh air in there, you're not breathing exhaust. So you're interrelating, those things are interrelated. All right, the fifth key point that changed in LEED 2009 is these regional priority credits, RPCs. So these are the additional 4 credits on top of innovation design that fall within that 10 bonus point area on top of the 100 base points. So 110 points possible. These are the last 4. Very important though. These are the ones that address your region. What's most important to your area, your site, and they're rewarding people that are actually implementing strategies that apply to your area. So what they did is basically talk to local experts, professionals, and said, what are the key problems or issues that need real solutions addressed to them, that need the most impact to make a difference? And after doing that, per zip code, so this is getting pretty specific, which is great, they actually assigned 6 credits to your specific zip code that are the most important to that area in terms of your development. And out of those 6, you can pick 4 to get this regional priority credit. So there's nothing additional you have to do within those credits. They're not additional credits themselves. They're credits that exist within the rating system that were picked out to be the most important to your area. If you achieve that credit, you automatically get this regional priority credit tacked onto it. So it's an additional point on top of an existing credit. So that's important to understand. These aren't new credits. These are kind of an additional weighting system that's just particular to your specific region based on your zip code. And there's a whole database on the USGBC website where you can look up Oregon 97202 and see your 6 credits that got decided to be the most important in your area. And let me tell you, stormwater management is on there, and I'm very happy about that, because that's where the houseboat is. The USGBC has this searchable database and can be looked up there. All right, couple examples of how this can vary and why this is important. So if you look at rural Michigan, there's some similarities and there's some contrasts to what's important in Oregon. So example, zip code 97131, kind of northeast. So rural Michigan, what was important to them was preservation of prime farmland, commodity to them. Light trespass, so this has to do with the light that trespass beyond your site. So it affects, nightlife, anything that survives by hunting and things during the nighttime, not be able to see the stars. And minimizing stormwater into the Great Lakes. So these were the 6 credits that had to do with that. We see site selection, stormwater management points, light trespass, and material and energy and atmosphere, renewable energy. So Oregon, you see density being important in Northeast. That's something that gets affected by our urban growth boundary, and we've really done a good job of working within dense areas. Daylighting is important. We have a lot of gray days, but daylighting is still very important to us. Stormwater management, yes, to reduce overflow into that combined storm sanitary. So you see some similarities. You see these SS credits 6.1, 6.2 running similarly over to Oregon. That's your stormwater credits. And 5.1 has to do with maximizing open space. So even if you're in an urban setting, you can still maximize open space. If you're in a dense area, a green roof can count towards that. There's different ways to add to your vegetation on your site to help and manage that stormwater. There's another synergy there. So you not only get the extra open space, help with biodiversity if you have native plantings, and just better for the community, but then you also help with stormwater, which is better for environmentally for your region. And we have sustainable forestry, FSC certified wood, and daylighting is IEQ 8.1.